is Schectman.
Welcome, everyone. We are here today because we got an extremely exciting show for you today. I am Dumb Money Media, the king of money, the meme sugar daddy. And what if I told you that we could have a true SilverSqueeze 2.0, but this time it's the Ultra Instinct Goku style one that we've all been waiting for. This is a plan that's going to sound crazy, but it's also brilliant. A perfect storm of events has been brewing, and we, as silver stacking apes, have the ability to take control of the silver endgame. That is right. That is right. But before we get into the nitty gritty, here with me today, we have the all-seeing ape, illuminated ape, and we are honored and humbled once again to have our extinguished guest, Andy Schectman of MilesFranklin.com. Hello, Andy. Welcome.
Good to see you, fellas. Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Well, it's beautiful to have you here, Andy. We have a crazy presentation to give you. I think some of it you know, some of it you might not know, but it is incredibly important information that Illuminated Ape has spent painstaking hours putting together. So what's up, Illuminated Ape? What's going on?
Well, DMM, Andy, thanks for joining me here today because I have something very powerful to present, which is some research that I've been doing intensively for the last 2 weeks. And I think, well, I actually feel like it in my gut that I know that this is the way that we can finally take control of the situation in the SilverSqueeze and direct an assault, if you will, or a motion that all apes can take a part of and start to take control of the silver endgame, which is really exciting.
Well, I'm interested in hearing what you got to say. That sounds cool.
And it's also a legal way to do it. It's a very legal way, and it's all
when
normal.
I say assault, I mean this in a metaphorical way, just so that any government official were to listen. I mean this specifically is I found legal ways that we can do this as a peaceful protest and hopefully, destroy the comex, maybe find some price discovery along the way. But hopefully more than anything, highlight the silver shortage. That is potentially a national security risk for us at this point. I will get into it. Let's start rolling with it. I want to just give a brief contextual history. I'm sure you've probably heard about this stuff, Andy, but for the viewers, just to give the context for the rest of the presentation, I want to let everyone know that in 1968, the U.S. Treasury transferred all of its holdings of silver, which accounted for 165 million troy ounces, into what is called the Defense Logistics Agency, which is governed by the Department of Defense. Also, to part of the initiative of using precious metals within the Department of Defense kind of ecosphere, in 1974, they started this program of a precious metals recovery program. They started as sort of a way of economically being able to take derelict and decomposing military equipment that contains silver and other precious metals and be able to bring that back into service. Actually being able to, in this example that I was able to find from 2019, they were grabbing silver at $4, little over, $4 a troy ounce versus the market. It was at about $16 troy ounce at that time. So they were able to source extremely cheap silver by this kind of program. But we're going to get into how that is also no longer an option for them. Like DMM was saying a bit ago, that we're in a perfect storm situation. So just as
one thing I'd like to add to your first slide, if you go back for a second. And I think absolutely. it would add a lot to the slide, is that if we go back way before 1968 to 1942. in 1942 something called the Manhattan Project, where they were attempting to build the atomic bomb, I guess. And the U.S. Treasury lent the Department of Defense 14,700 tons of silver for the Manhattan Project. And so, this has been a common theme in terms of modern warfare going all the way back to, World War II. And I think it's important to understand that when we talk about silver's role, not only as an industrial metal, but I think to what you're getting at here, a very much a strategic metal.
Absolutely. And that's a really good call out. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, there's a lot of silver that is going into the military, and that's a really good example of one particular area. But it's also, missiles. It, comes down to just a whole lot of stuff, and we'll get into it a little bit later. But I want to just, cover some sort of we're doing sort of a back history thing because, Apes, they got into the SilverSqueeze, may not be fully aware of this back history. So we're going to give them full context of the situation so they have the best understanding of this plant. And I think a whole lot about the Hunt brothers situation, what happened in the 80s. Can you kind of just give a kind of basic overview of sort of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument that what the Hunt brothers witness is similar to what we're seeing right now. As an example, right now, when you take a look at what's happening on COMEX, you have an open interest of roughly 151,000 ounces, or excuse me, 151,000 contracts. And so you multiply that times 5,000, you're talking 75 million ounces of silver, over 75 million ounces of silver in terms of open interest. That means the contracts that have been written. But the problem with that is that there's only 27 million ounces of silver backing those contracts. And so you end up with a situation where there are far more contracts written than there are bars being able to be delivered if everyone stood for delivery. This is what the Hunt brothers understood and realized. So not only did they try and gobble up all of the contracts, they tried to stand for delivery, and which would have squeezed the COMEX market, could have actually put them out of business. So the exchange, instead of cannibalizing their own, they changed the rules on them, making it illegal to belong that number of contracts. Of course, they never added, you can be short as much as you want, but they put a limit on how much you could belong. So the Hunt brothers were forced then to liquidate those contracts or be in violation of securities law or commodity law, rather. And that drove down the price. They would have gone to jail otherwise. So similar situation here now, more contracts by a large degree called rehypothecation than there are bars that could be delivered backing those contracts that are out there and owned by people who think they actually own 5,000 ounces of silver per contract.
Right. So it's one of those situations where if they were kind of pressed to deliver all that silver, what you're saying is they more than likely wouldn't have that silver to deliver.
Correct.
So I just kind of asked you though. So they rapidly changed the rules of the futures exchange in order to push the Hunt brothers out of the squeeze at that time. But doesn't that set the precedent that they would change these rules when the rules were no longer convenient, say going forward?
I believe that will happen. I think that there will come a moment where the exchange no longer allows delivery of these commodities. And in essence, to me, that's a default, a technical default anyway. It's force majeure where they pay you in cash. And that is one of the things they have the right to do. And I would argue this is why you've seen such a precipitous drawdown and methodically. Yeah, you had another, I don't know, tremendous amount of silver coming off the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the largest one-day delivery ever a week and a half ago. You have the LBMA down to basically the lowest level of silver they've had in 140 years, and this is the second lowest registered level ever on the COMEX. The big money sees this coming, sees that event coming, and they have been draining the exchanges methodically. while suppressing the paper price to get in front of this, because silver is a very, very, very important material for so many industrial applications. And you have to wonder, at what point does there become a battle between the industrials and the hedge funds, where the investment says, geez, this is an incredible investment. It's half of its all-time high, and the uses for it are incredible. There was a 270 million ounce shortfall or whatever it was last year that's projected to be the same thing this year. The demand is outpacing the supply. It's disappearing in nature, and its uses are becoming greater and greater and greater. And the above ground supplies are being methodically and systematically bled dry. At some point, that sets the stage for a major battle. But when the exchanges say we no longer will deliver, that's the moment, if I were the BRICS nations, that I would then really assert myself, since they're the countries who are accumulating and producing all the metal, of a new exchange that would take over for with the COMEX that would be rendered obsolete, whether it be the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the Dubai Metals Exchange, or the new exchange in Moscow. One way or the other, we're this close to watching the COMEX be exposed for what it really is. And you see that type of moment where they no longer allow deliveries, it becomes truly a scam. And I think that's the Rubicon that we haven't crossed yet. But when we do, everything changes that moment, when the price setting mechanism moves to the east.
Do you before I respond to that, because I know he has a lot to say with that. If the COMEX, so let's just say when the COMEX restricts withdrawals or redemptions, do you think it's only going to apply to retail investors and small millionaires, or are they going to leave it open for the companies, the institutions to still?
No, they really
dabble?
can't. I mean, look at it this way. All right. So there's 27 million ounces on COMEX. And right now in the registered category, there is 244 million ounces in the eligible category, right? And the eligible category are bars that are considered eligible for the COMEX ecosystem. They've been vetted and approved. They're inside of a COMEX warehouse. As an example, let me just kind of set the stage. We have a Brinks storage program. I believe we have the finest storage program in the industry, and we have 8 vaults. One of the 8 vaults is in New York City, Brinks JFK. That is a COMEX warehouse. I have 2 clients, just 2 clients of the many that we have there, each of them over 1 million ounces of silver, both of them. I have probably 200 clients there, including an account of my own there that represent 1,000-ounce bars, and most of them that are in the eligible category. They're not for sale. No one's selling them, but they are eligible, whereby if, to your point, an industrial, Elon Musk says, anyone who's got a 1,000-ounce bar inside a COMEX, I will pay them a $12 premium per ounce to buy it, whatever it is. Bang, you can transfer it from eligible to registered just like that, right? So 244 million ounces in the registered category, 27 million in eligible. The country of India imported 304 million ounces last year. In the past 2 months, we've seen exchange for physical, which is where contracts are written on COMEX, and to not have that moment where we start to bleed it down so much that we see a cash settlement or a force majeure. About 250 million ounces have been sent over to the London Metals Exchange in what's called exchange for physical. They take these contracts, instead of getting delivery here on COMEX, they do it in the UK, which makes it much more difficult to track and to see what's really happening to COMEX. It's probably a deal where they said, you can't do this, you got to go that way. It's a closed door meeting type of deal, and these exchange for physicals have been huge. But if 250 million roughly ounces were exchanged for physical in 2 months, if we're seeing 160 million or so ounces, somewhere in that neighborhood, drawn down off the COMEX since SilverSqueeze 1.0, if we're seeing India import 304 million ounces, then what the hell is an exchange that sets the price really for the globe that only has 244 million ounces total in it, of which only 27 million are available for sale? It's a scam. It's rehypothecated. It's fractionally reserved. It's this is what the big money understands. And I want to make one other point. When you see, in essence, this massive drawdown where, we're seeing metal 755,000 ounces leave the COMEX in the last week or so. When you're seeing metal just fly off of the exchange, you have to understand that when you do that, you've lost all industrial liquidity. So, if Elon Musk makes that statement, well, you're not getting all of those 1,000-ounce bars back into the ecosystem, reassay them, ship them back into a COMEX warehouse, and pay the money to have them assayed and reintroduced. The time lag, the price tag, all of that. When you see deliveries leaving the way that it has, it's crazy. It's truly crazy, because what you're seeing is a one-way ticket. These are people that don't care about the industrial liquidity. They want the silver in their possession off of the exchanges that provide immediate liquidity. So, it's a one-way ticket. And I think we're going to see that moment sooner than people think. We're that close right now. And maybe that's why we're seeing the exchange for physicals the way that we are, so that we don't trigger that moment where everything breaks apart.
Well, that's everything you just said right
Epic.
now just gets me really excited, because we talked prior to this about this crazy idea that SDC is working on right now, and I think it's going to work, and we'll announce it at the end. Also a contest at the end, and I'll let Illuminated continue on
Let
with
me,
the
one more
presentation.
point I'd like to make on this. And so far this year, there's been about 13,000 contracts that have stood for delivery. That's 65 million ounces so far this year, just this year. And, so put that in context. That's 3 times the registered category have already been delivered. Over 240 tons of gold have been delivered since January 1st. And, you're talking, last week when I was laying on the couch recovering from surgery, I read that in the 7 previous trading days, 55 tons of gold have been delivered. So what you are seeing is a overt effort to push people away from the interest because of the price. They are able to suppress, counterintuitively, I might add, the paper price, and at the same time drain the exchanges. See, this is what betrays the price, because the biggest money in the world, who is also closest to the playbook and the information, well, they know where we're going. And if price was so determinant of value, then why the hell are the exchanges being bled dry, right? You would think it would be the opposite of that. You would see eligible and registered increasing in instead of decreasing. In other words, people are selling back and selling it into the ecosystem and moving away. So all I can tell you is that the behavior of the most sophisticated players in the world, the central banks, is betraying the price that we are seeing on COMEX.
Well, I think I know why, and it coincides a lot with the military's usage of this precious metals. They need it desperately, so much so that they would, and I believe, engage in a market suppression of price. Because if you take the example back with the Hunt brothers, the Silver User Association reported that consumption dropped 25% in 1980, and this was due to the fact the industry just couldn't get the metal. It was, the price was so volatile. It jumped from around $6 all the way up to 49 and some change. I mean, that's an excessive jump. And if you're expecting or had contracts out for silver at that time, and you estimated a budget of a certain project, well, overnight that project would have exponentially jumped up in price. So I think what had happened after their COMEX changes, still the silver riggers, shall we say, still needed to suppress the price down and get it even lower, especially with all the plans that they were probably already knowing in the back of their head, or the people closest to the plan, like you were saying, had the foresight of knowing they needed all the silver. So as I was sort of tracking down the various administrations from Carter to Reagan around a certain time period, I found that Reagan was using the stockpile to tease the market in a very sort of market manipulative way, that they were saying they were going to sell the stockpile, this massive amount of silver, but they kept teasing it over the course of over a year and a half. And then I came across this article, though, that I found a wonderful statistic. So last time we were talking, Andy, we brought up the Tomahawk missile, and now there's a widely known statistic that it's like between 4 to 500 ounces per missile out there. Well, I got one that beats that one out of the water. The nukes. So one particular nuke, the Peacekeeper MX missile, they allocated 35 million ounces of silver for the batteries for this project, and they ended up only making 50. They were aiming to make 100 of these things. So if you take 35 million, you divide it by 100. Each one of these missiles has 350k ounces each. Or troy ounces each, are equivalent to 24,000 pounds of silver. I think that is just mind blowing, because if you consider, for example, I got a tab open here for all the other countries that are out there that have ballistic missiles. Russia has 20, 10 active, 10 inactive. India has 5. We got 2 active in the United States, but we got plenty of that are one in development, bunch inactive. Like all of these missiles and other missiles took a lot of silver, and I just have to think to myself, yeah, how is this accounted for? If it's like we have a good example here from an article from 1981, but in your years of dealing with this, tracking various allocations of silver, is there any sort of resource that people can look towards to see exactly how much the military is using for these things?
I have not seen any whatsoever. I think your research is exemplary. It's fantastic, and maybe this is part of the reason that the U.S. is withholding production of silver eagles. Maybe they're stockpiling silver. Maybe they understand that this is a strategic metal that is needed. Maybe this is why you're seeing a bleed down. Part of the reason you're seeing a bleed down from the exchanges. This is something that they're not going to be very overt about. They've exhausted their silver stockpile many years ago. Maybe they actually used the silver stockpile that was held by the U.S. and gave it all to the Department of Defense. I don't know where they're sourcing all of this silver, and I think they're very tight-lipped about it. In fact, I'll be quite frank. I had never heard anyone talking about the Tomahawk cruise missiles besides me before, and I don't even remember where I heard it, where I read it. What you have just written here is fantastic, and I think it goes to show, that a lot of the metal that is being accumulated by these countries for these types of purposes probably is very much hush hush on the down low, because it sheds a light upon their defense arsenal that maybe they don't want people to know. And I wonder how accurate it is when they talk about how many of these missiles they have that are actually active versus what they're not telling the rest of the world. And I would think that if you are building a defense, you're not going to be completely and totally forthright with your adversaries. So maybe I'm wrong. I haven't researched it. Maybe they have to be very open about it. But if I were just assuming things, I would say there's probably a lot more that we don't know about in terms of weaponry and arsenal, that no one ever knows where the silver came from, how they got it, and where they intend on getting more from.
Well, this is an
I
interesting
think you're
thing.
absolutely right. I was just going to say real quick that as I was researching this, I came across many documents from the DoD that were redacted. So it is 100% in national interest to keep certain things secret, especially how much silver goes into certain projects. So, yeah, absolutely, we really don't know. And with how secretive our government is over the last, I guess, century from World War II onward, when it comes to the allocation of our precious metal holdings, I think a lot of it may not even be priced into the market of what's been used. It's a little scary.
Well, yeah, if you think about all the silver,
you
think about all the silver that's ever been produced. That's one of the things about it. The silver that's used in industrial applications is gone. I mean, you take warfare out of it and just look at all the things that conduct electricity that have been used over the last 80 plus years in industrial applications. They're in landfills. So that's one of the characteristics about silver and its industrial applications, is that it's used so sparingly in each application. We're not talking 35 or 350,000 ounces per nuclear warhead, but anything that, a flashlight, a calculator, this calculator probably has a tiny bit of silver in its circuitry. Maybe it's a tenth of an ounce or whatever it is. That stuff's gone forever in landfills when it's done, and no one circulates it back out. When you talk about military applications, yeah, it's, you blow up a bomb, that silver's gone forever. And this is probably one of the reasons I found it very interesting, which really supports a lot of, I think, where you're going with this, that there is a branch of the US government called the US Geological Survey Society. They publicly came out and just said that the world's silver supply will be mostly depleted by 2036. And that Mexico, the largest producer of silver in the world, is rapidly depleting its in-ground resources. They expect it to be mostly depleted by 2030. So when you talk about depleting stockpiles, increase uses, and then the military applications, which I don't think are going away anytime soon. Yeah, this is the crux of everything that we are trying to say to people, that that this is a whole lot more important metal, not just for its monetary applications, but for its everyday uses. And I think there will be a scurry at the end to secure it. It hasn't happened yet, but I think there will be. And the price, which is misdirecting everyone, is falling right into the hands of the central banks, who are accumulating it for things like warfare and other industrial and strategic endeavors.
Absolutely. And just to kind of touch base on Mexico for a second. So I was reading recently that we actually were overhauling the mining industry generally and banning open pit mining. So, the course of researching this, in terms of the stockpile, the military's always argued they don't even need a stockpile because they have Canada and Mexico as well as themselves to supply their needs there. But with the overhaul for the mining industry in Mexico, do you see this as more of now a security risk for the United States?
Absolutely. And there's no question that when you look at Peru and when you look at Mexico, Mexico joining the BRICS, and both and Peru on the Belt Road, your China is strengthening its ties with the countries that produce the silver. And I find it interesting, the second largest mint in the world, or mine in the world, in Mexico, run by Newmont Pesquito or Pensaquito, they're on strike and they've shut down. Peru, the third largest producer of silver in the world, their production numbers are down over 7%. So you're seeing countries that I think very quickly will realize that, hey, the asset is depleting. This is a very important strategic metal. We're going to nationalize the mines, or those that have all of these assets in ground are joining alliances with countries like China and others. And this is why you see China going into Africa and South America and building infrastructure. They're going to underdeveloped countries and building the infrastructure to build gold and silver mines, to build oil refineries, to build bridges and roads and maritime channels and ports and all of this infrastructure to exploit the natural resources that are rapidly depleting. And if they don't look at it as a national security issue, I think it would be crazy. And again, not to get too far off track, but I know you and I talked yesterday about Vic Swear's interview with the head of the U.S. Silver Mint program, or the Silver Eagle program, who'd been there for 35 years. It's a fascinating 3-part interview. But in part 2, the gentleman says, yeah, the Mint came to me and said, what is the least amount of Silver Eagles we can make without creating a stir? In other words, they're withholding silver. Maybe they've finally woken up. Maybe this is why Silver Eagles have been produced in tiny quantities for the last 3 years compared to the other 5 major mints, compared to what they have been able to do. In many of the years that I've been doing this, they were making almost 50 million coins. They made just barely over 12 million, 13 million last year. And they're on pace right now to only make another 13 or 14 million, to where the primary distributors came to the head of the Eagle program and said, we'll take another 30 plus million coins, and they only got 12 million. The law says they have to make as many Eagles as are demanded. The primary distributor said, we'll take 30 plus million, and they only gave them 12. They are doing all they can, it would appear, to not provide silver to the public the way that the law says they have to. So what are they doing with it? Why are they suppressing the price? Why is Bank of America, why have they been short, massive amounts of silver, or JP Morgan, or any of these commercial banks, at a period of time where you have to be dumb as a mud wall to be short in this environment, unless, of course, you're being instructed by the central bank and the government to do this so that the government can replenish its stockpile, realizing that it's disappearing. When a branch of their own government says it'll all be gone by 2036, none of it makes sense unless you take a step back and say, well, this probably is the plausible explanation. Occam's razor. I can't think of any other reason but the fact that what you're talking about here represents national security. And if they don't bolster their supplies, the rest of the world eastward will have accumulated all the above ground supply like they've been doing for the last few years, and then we're in big trouble.
I think you're actually on the money right there. And just to segue into but sort of the cause of all of this baby shorting and shady business right now is that it has reported both last year and into this year, the Ukraine war has depleted the United States munitions and military stockpiles. And as reported by Pickaxe earlier in the week, there's a lot more military application, as well as we gone over in this presentation. So if they're going out of their way right now to secure silver in order to fulfill contracts, I think that would be a good motivator. Would you think?
100%. And I believe it's probably true. And I don't say this to denigrate the Ukrainian people or the tragedy and travesty of war. God forbid we ever experience anything like it. My heart goes out to them. But what a waste of our resources. And it's just, this is something that we shouldn't be doing. And the short-sightedness of this current administration is terrifying to me on many levels, and this being one of them, where not only are we in a war that we shouldn't be, I mean, you could argue we've never been closer to World War III ever, and at the same time, not only are we going further and further and further into debt, where $150 billion has been given to the Ukraine, but we have to extend our debt ceiling and have not enough money to protect our borders, where $5 billion is too much to build a wall to keep our kids dying from fentanyl poisoning. But 150 billion and depleting our munition stockpile is a good choice. The choices that are being made are ridiculous, and I don't know even what I'm trying to say with that, other than to say that because of all of this mismanagement, because of all of this idiocy, I think when we talk about the living in a world of probabilities rather than certainties, there is a very high probability that the demand for silver will become parabolic at some point, because as you're showing here, the need for it industrially, militarily, and massive demand monetarily is going to reach a point where the diminished stockpiles above ground will make everyone say, my God, it's all disappearing. We need to get it now. And maybe that's why we've seen the exchanges depleted the way they have. And maybe that's why we've seen 3 straight years of the mint behaving oddly, where you can't find anything, because maybe they've realized that it's disappearing. But I'll put it to you this way. There's 6 major mints of the world. And I have had, as one of only 27 U.S. mint resellers, I'm not an authorized purchaser, I'm an authorized reseller. The fact that I can buy coins from Australia, South Africa, the United Kingdom, Austria, and Canada far easier and for way less money than the U.S. mint, something ain't right. And it's been that way for 3 years. And when you listen to the interview that Bix has, yeah, he tells you that they told him to do this, but what we're not getting is the why. He intimates that it was the silver's being used to go to their numismatic program where they make more profit because they're not allowed to make profit on the silver eagles. And that doesn't even make sense to me either, because they don't sell enough of that stuff to matter for 30 seconds worth of government spending. It just seems to me that they realize what you're saying right here. And our government may be nefarious and frightening, but they're not stupid. And there is a motive behind what they're doing. Well, maybe they are stupid, but nonetheless, you can see that this is a reality. It's disappearing and its uses are needed. And, in terms of protecting this country, yeah, there's no question that silver is a strategic metal. And I think maybe is the real root cause of why the U.S. Mint has been completely void of silver over the last 3 years.
I absolutely agree. And I was even able to source a confirmation of this very fact from a document from 1993 that stated that the Department of Defense most widely used precious metal is silver. So, going into more of that mint aspect of all these things, I've also was looking into some congressional records and following the national stockpile. It was actually depleted. We have no national stockpile anymore. It was depleted 1 month after this congressional record. They said they projected 2 months. It actually happened in less than a month with the passing of the Support of America's Silver Eagle Bullion Program Act. Which changed the rules a little bit, and I'll get into it in a minute. But I'm just sort of, curious from your perspective. If, for instance, there was national shortages of silver, and how would this potentially affect the market in the short term and the long term?
Well,
for industry wise.
First of all, I feel bad for Mr. Crapo. He probably had a rough childhood there with that last name. But how could it look? This is the type of information that would rapidly disseminate to the world, and I would think that this is part of the reason we've seen it be very clandestine and methodical in the way that the exchanges have been drained on this side, because when it flips to the other side and everyone realizes that they are all vying for the very little bit of silver that is left, where the U.S. Geological Survey Society says by 2036 the world stockpile will be largely gone. Well, it's important to understand that silver is found geologically in a form called epithermal. It's very near the surface. The big deposits were found decades ago. And that's why of the billion ounces that were mined last year, 650 million came from companies that don't mine silver. They just found it mining other elements. The companies that mine silver were only responsible for 35% of all the silver mined. And that's decreasing. And even still, we had a 260 or 70 or 80 million ounce shortfall last year. So I guess what I'm getting at is that when you realize the stockpiles are very slim, when you realize it's disappearing in nature, when you realize it's right now 83-1 in terms of gold silver ratio, but it's coming out of the ground, according to my friend Keith Newmeyer, at 7-1. So it's depleting. The price is way out of whack. It's an anomaly. The demands are increasing. The needs for it are increasing, especially in terms of military. This is an event that once it becomes a realization to the public that this is indeed what's happening, what you're talking about right here, more than just about anything I've ever heard in the silver market, would represent a massive catalyst where you wake up on a Monday morning and it's up $100 an ounce and it just becomes unobtainium. You can't find it. And that would explain the slow, methodical bleed down of the exchanges, because if the big money just stood for delivery, people say, well, they could buy everything. Yeah, they could, and it would be over very quickly. And then what? But if you keep it in a trading range, you allow it to go up, you suck in the speculators, you smash the shit out of it, you break everyone's heart, you keep the public on the sideline, let it go back up, suck the speculators, smash the shit out of it, break everyone's heart. That's what they've been doing forever. This is allowing them to methodically drain as much as they possibly can until there's no more blood to be squeezed out of the turnip. So I think when that happens, everything goes from a very slow, methodical, private, quiet, behind the scenes endeavor to right in your face. You better get your ass out there and find whatever you can because it's gone. That's the kind of environment I think we will see. And like they talk about, what was his name? Hemingway, how he went broke little by little by little, then all at once. And that's what I think we're going to see with the stockpiles of available silver. Little by little, we have seen being bled down since 2020. In 2020, the COMEX market delivered more metal than we typically see in a 10-year cycle. That was the beginning of the draining of the exchange. For 3 years, this has been going on, not just COMEX, but the LBMA, the ETFs, and now the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And so little by little, we are seeing the world's silver stockpiles being bled down, and bang, there will come that moment when people say, holy shit, if we don't do this, you're talking the security of our country. Or if we don't do this, we can't make iPhones anymore, or we can't make batteries anymore, or what? And so, yeah, I think the inevitability of this is what allows me to wake up in the morning and come online and talk to the world in an environment where the metals have acted completely counterintuitively to the environment we live in. Silver should be way higher right now, but the fact that it's not is being the spotlight is shining upon why are the exchanges being bled down by sophisticated big money if it's not really important. And how do you do that? You misdirect. No, this isn't important. Go look over there at crypto and the stocks. Don't worry about this shiny stuff. And they scoop it up when no one's looking, and they're using the suppression of price and the counterintuitive price action to run cover for it, specifically because of this, because there will come a moment when the world says, holy shit, we're done. We're done if we don't. And then you got the hedge funds saying, well, they're done. We got to go throw all your money into the silver market. And it becomes a battle at the last moment of what is available for the last bits of scraps of silver that the market will get rid of.
And then we only got to wait like 10, 5-10 years for a mine to catch up because they've been underfunded this whole time.
Yeah, but not only that, I mean, there are many gold mines and very few silver mines, simply because of the way that it is found in the earth. And so these big stockpiles are long gone.
Oh yeah.
And you're right. The price, along with the rising price of energy, has made exploration, very, very slim to none. So yeah, 5 to 10 years to bring a mine online if they found it, and into full production. And at that point, what is the geopolitical environment? I mean, are the countries of Mexico, who has already applied to BRICS, or Peru, who is on the Belt Road, they'll probably join BRICS. I mean, are these countries going to want to sell their metal to the West? Or is this why you're seeing these strategic alliances, why China is partnering with all of these countries who are deep in natural resources? They think in terms of decades. We think in terms of days. We're more concerned about the trial of Trump than we are the big picture. And that's the problem here, is they don't care about the minutia. They're looking at the big picture. They are not only partnering with, striking relationships with, you're talking countries that represent the majority of all of the world's commodities. And not to mention 2 of the 3 largest nuclear weapon arsenals, China and Russia. So, you're talking an inevitability as it pertains to stockpiling these strategic metals.
I absolutely hit the nail on the head. And, just kind of segueing into, just look at the timing of this depletion of the stockpile. It was right after 9/11, when the Patriot Act was being debated in Congress, and everybody was sort of stirred up with terrorism and issues with our national security and whatnot. That there was probably very little talk of our silver national stockpile being depleted at that time. So this thing sort of got swept underneath the rug for a lot of the news cycle, I think. But one major change that I've found that they did from this is they had to change the laws pertaining to where the U.S. Mint obtained their silver to produce the Silver Eagle program. And what I found very interesting was this little section. This both confirmed that the stockpile is depleted. But then it changed the law that at such a time that the stockpile is depleted, that the secretary may obtain the silver from other sources. But what I find very interesting is the language that the secretary shall not pay more than the average world price for silver under any circumstances. And they go on to describe that the world price is dictated by a widely recognized commodity exchange at the time the silver was obtained by the treasury. But that tells me is that they have to pay spot price for the metal. Is that right, Andy?
It's spot price plus, the cost of shipping and that kind of stuff. And I do believe that is true. In an interview with the president of Sunshine Mint, he admitted that the U.S. He was asked again by Big Squeer, how do there's a rumor out there of shortages of blanks. Well, he said, no, that really isn't the case because they take delivery of comex contracts, bars, and ship them to the Sunshine Refinery, who then makes the blanks. In other words, it's not a shortage of blanks, because if it were, then, why are they taking delivery of 1,000-ounce bars, which you would get real damn close to spot plus the shipping to Sunshine? So why, why do we think that that's the case? It's not the case. So they could be taking delivery of comex contracts and sending them to Sunshine and make as many Silver Eagles as they want. It's interesting. So yeah, that is the case. They're not supposed to pay more than spot for it. And if they are indeed using 1,000-ounce bars from comex, they're not paying much more than spot for it. So there's something more to it than meets the eye here.
So, to produce the 2023 Eagles, if we were to say massively purchase up the Eagles, they would just have to keep taking these deliveries from the comex, right?
In theory, yes. But if you go back to Bix's interview, he comes back and says, listen, I used to be on the trading desk of one of the primary distributors, and I know how this works. And he said the primary distributors came to us in 2022 and said, we'll take another 30 million ounces. And we only gave them 12. And so right there, that's the problem, is that the mint is conscientiously, they're doing this. They know what they're doing. And the fact that the demand was 3 times what was provided is really the issue. So whether or not this endeavor would indeed precipitate a continuing run on the comex, or they do what they did in 2022 and just say, to the head of the guy running the mint, the Eagle program, who's been there for 35 years, I want the smallest number of Eagles we can produce without public outcry. And yeah, we're only going to give you 12 million ounces, even though you want over 30. These are all big, big issues. And maybe it just continues to shed a light upon what's going on. And again, take a step back from this and ask yourself, why the hell would they do this? Why would, that's the question, the why. There's no other reason to do things like this unless this is bigger than what we would just see on the surface. And it probably comes back to what you are talking about right here. This is a metal that if you don't have, your national security is in trouble. And I think maybe that all centers around what you're getting at.
Yes, I am exactly. And just to kind of reiterate on what you're talking about with the, secretary, it has to beat demand, right? That is the law. Now, for them to go back, come and say to anybody that we're only going to give you XYZ amount when you asked for XYZ amount, that was way more, that's technically breaking the law as it is written here. So you talked about public outcry, and I think at the time that this was happening and still happening, there really isn't enough public outcry of the situation to give it enough attention. And this is what really this is about. This presentation is, one, we have to give it attention because there's a national issue, a national security issue. So for any American listening out there, this is very important for our continued existence, especially when there's other countries that are competing for this metal.
Well, what creates attention? Price. Why did Bitcoin get so noticed? Price. And then people started to research it and understand it. Why does everyone think that the road to retirement is paved with stocks, certificates, and mutual funds? Price of the indice. I started in this industry in 1990. It was 2,100. It went to 36,000 price. So if you want to create a perception of reality and throw everyone off the scent, you suppress the price. Why would Bank of America be short like 1 billion ounces of silver? I mean, how stupid do you have to be? Price. And you're being told from the highest up. So that is really how do you get the public involved? Price. But when the price goes up, it'll be after all of the money has already drained the exchanges, when the price is down, when no one is paying attention. I live in a very nice golf community in Southern Florida. And I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I did this with you or not, but the guy across the street from me is on the Forbes 40 list for most successful money managers in the United States. And he runs $7 or $8 billion. And I golf with him. And the only conversation we have about metals, he's always asked me, why is it not going up? Why is it going down? And he's only cognizant of the fact that it isn't performing the way intuitively we would think it would. Now, this is a guy that manages billions of dollars who has no allocation to metals. Why? Price. And if you take a step back and say, okay, so the price dissuades the average person or even the sophisticated, quote unquote, sophisticated mainstream investor, okay, then why the hell is it being bled dry all across the globe? Why the hell is the mint not producing coins? There's something bigger here. And that is what you need to grab onto. You being the people here listening to this, is that the biggest money in the world does not do things just for shits and giggles. They understand that you can control people's perception by price. And how do you control price? Levered futures contracts, where one commercial bank can look at it this way. As an example, just to make my point, right? When we talk about perception of reality, last week when the price fell, I'm laying on the couch and I'm doing some numbers. Last week when the price of silver got clobbered, in 15 minutes, 25,890,000 ounces or 5,178,000 contracts were dumped onto the market in 15 minutes. Now that trader would either be jailed or shot, and I don't know in which order. Because if you want to sell 26 million ounces of silver, do you think it's smart to dump it at the open in 15 minutes? Or do you bleed it out over a period of days? And it was a drive-by shooting specifically done to affect sentiment. And that's exactly what they did. And with the massive open interest out there where people could stand for delivery versus the number of bars standing behind it, they wanted to give everyone margin calls and drop the hell out of the price and make all of these open interest contracts pretty much go away. So if you realize that price and the ability to control price with levered futures contracts, that's all naked shorting 26 million. Who the fuck has 26 million ounces to drop at the opening? Nobody. And so that's the point here, is that you understand that what is happening, it sucks, but take a step back and say, why? Okay. And then everyone's accumulating it at the highest of high levels of sophistication and money. It makes it much easier to listen to what you're saying and embrace it. What your research is exemplary. It's fantastic. And it's right on the money. And I think it also undercover or exposes part of the reason why price discovery is what it is, and also why the people who know the playbook have been methodically draining the exchanges. It all adds up. But think about the fact that in 15 minutes at the open, 26 million ounces of silver were dumped. That is not how you get the most bang for your sale. You do it slowly, over time, methodically. You dump it all at once, you have guaranteed the worst settlement you can possibly get. And that's why silver fell $1 in a matter of 15 minutes.
Do you think these drive-bys that these large entities are doing and stuff now, do you think that's actually going to become the norm because the supplies are so low now, and now they basically don't have the time anymore to spread it out over a few months?
No, I don't, because look at this. They dumped 26 million ounces of silver. There's only 27 million ounces on the registered category. So it reeks of desperation. It reeks of the final chapter. I don't know
Yes.
when that happens, but I can tell you that if you were to look at the drawdown of silver, just Google silver drawdown from the LBMA, look at silver drawdown on the COMEX since January 2021. And, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a pack of cigarettes, they're getting down to their last couple cigarettes and then what? So, I know that's a stupid analogy, but I mean, they had a full pack at one point and now that pack is almost gone. And that's kind of what's happening with the above ground stockpiles or the stockpiles on the exchanges. And if you knew that ultimately that was the event, the ultimate end game, well, if you know that, then you're going to spend the last 3 years methodically draining the exchanges quietly, suppressing the price, creating volatility, keeping it in trading range, letting it go up, smashing it, letting it go up, and get as much silver into the system and take possession of it as you can while not alerting the masses. And when the masses finally figure it out and say, holy shit, those guys were right, there won't be any to get because it happens that quickly. There's so much money out there in comparison to the pimple on the elephant's ass, that being the amount of silver or the people interested in it now for the right reasons, that it will just create an event where 99% of the people who finally wake up won't have an ability to get anything real with any reasonable price or any reasonable time frame. And again, I think that what you're saying is fantastic, and it explains a lot about why we're seeing things unfold the way that we are. Your eyes lie to you. Your gut tells you the truth. It just depends upon whether or not you listen to it.
Well, I think that's a good thing to touch base on is, there's all of this sort of obfuscation that is existing in the market. Someone like myself could coin that as a kind of psychological warfare that our own government is employing in order to keep panic as low as possible about this national security issue.
Of course.
And just like we were touching base, the mint has the capacity to make these coins, but as we see in 2001 and 2002, it's like they're ramping down production as demand ramps up, but they're not being pressed on any of this as a legal front because there's not enough public outcry, as we were saying. I don't know if you remember this, Andy, but I guess like a month or two into the start of the SilverSqueeze, the U.S. Mint comes out, emails all their customers. The main takeaways are that the global silver shortage, they actually acknowledge the silver shortage, had driven demand for many of our bullion and numismatic products to record highs. As the demand for silver remains greater than the supply, the reality is such that not everybody will be able to purchase coins. That statement to me seems almost illegal based on what we've already seen and see in the laws, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only coin that they're required to produce is the Silver Eagle. And, look, none of it makes sense. That last slide that you showed between 8 and 12 million ounces being produced, you go back to 2012 after silver got clobbered from 50 down to 30 something. They made almost 50 million. And in 2013 also. And they have the ability to make a lot of them. Ted Butler surmises that JP Morgan was the primary buyer of all those Eagles during a period of time when I can promise you that, the demand for Silver Eagles was not anywhere near what the level of production was. Yet who was buying them all, I don't know. But yeah, there is something very funky with that chart right there, because I can think of many years where they made between 30 and almost 50 million coins. And I'll tell you that in 2021, as an example, and 2020, our business went parabolic. And of that business, 95% of it was in silver. And, say what you want about Wall Street silver and the way that they kind of blew a good thing and embarrassed themselves. They started a trend that was incredible. And it changed a lot of things. And I think you guys have the ability to carry this torch and take it where it needs to be, because people need to understand what you're talking about here. People need to understand that this is a generational opportunity. People need to understand that You don't find opportunities in investing like this if you're lucky, but once in a lifetime, where an asset that is massively depleting in geological terms, that is an anomaly in its relationship to gold geologically and price for over 5,000 years. An asset that not only is depleting at the same time is increasing in utility and in uses. An asset that has duality in demand between industrial and monetary investments. An asset that is needed in so many digital and green applications that if you don't have it, and as you're eloquently pointing out, for warfare, you're screwed. And so this is a once in a generation opportunity. And I think that before this is all said and done, this type of information that you're providing is, needs to get out to the masses. I'm going to send it out to everyone I can think of. I'll send this out to 70,000 people and hope it gets picked up. This type of journalistic research is something lacking today in many respects. And I think this is the kind of information that should hopefully open people's eyes to really what silver represents. I truly believe it is a generational opportunity. I, honest to God, believe it is the opportunity or the value proposition of a generation. And it ticks every box: diminished supply, increased demand, massive uses that are growing, and a world that is competing for it on two fronts, maybe three: military, industrial, monetary. And at the same time, we're experiencing major deficits in mining supply. The whole thing, you couldn't write down on a piece of paper a better backdrop for what would be the investment of a decade, of a generation, of a lifetime. And I say that as God is my witness. I mean that to my soul.
Well, first of all, thank you for the praise. I appreciate that. It's a labor of love, let me tell you.
I understand that very well.
Lots of love and lots of labor.
But you're absolutely right in all the points you made. And, it concerns me. Everything that's going on in the world today concerns me. And now let's toss this monkey wrench into the picture where we may have an issue where we can't even defend ourselves because our military is so depleted with the stockpile and munitions. And where are we going to get the silver to recoup all the efforts, and make sure that this country is secure against the growing BRICS and other economic monetary issues that are coming into to disrupt pretty much the world reserve currency. And that's basically what gives our money value at this point, based and that it's still the reserve currency. But I just want to segue into just something that I couldn't really find a way to fit perfectly into the presentation, but I am curious on your take on this. So
I have no one has ever told me what the hell the security feature means. I mean, a notch missing.
Yeah,
it's weird. I don't know. And why is it on the gold eagle but not the gold buffalo? And what does the notch mean? I mean, we've x-rayed them. I've everything we can possibly do with sophisticated machinery, we see nothing on it. What does it mean? I'm not quite sure. And they've done a really poor job of explaining. When you look at like the Canadian maple leaf, they have a miniature micro engraved maple leaf that machine probably cost $20 million to make. The tiniest little maple leaf, articulate as hell on the face of the coin. And they tell you it's a anti-counterfeit measure. Well, what the hell does the notch mean? Anti-counterfeit measure. Well, how? And I don't know. I mean, who knows? Who knows the answer to that? Even as an authorized reseller, I can't find anyone to tell me what it means.
I don't know if you can share this information, but have you heard from any of your customers apprehension or concern regarding the Type 2 egos and purchasing them specifically versus maybe wanting the other ones because they're just kind of unsure about the security feature?
It's interesting you bring that up because at the very beginning, no one wanted them. They only wanted the pre-2021 Silver Eagles. And now a lot of people who are buying them prefer them because they feel that it has something to do with a new system that will roll out where gold and silver are used as legal tender. Now, I will say it's kind of interesting when you see all of these states that are joining into the use of gold and silver as legal tender, and the latest being North Carolina. And it's, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 states have embraced gold and silver as legal tender, not only to pay your property tax or to be used in the state treasury, but for all debts, public and private, for shopkeepers that want to employ them. It's an interesting question. The fear of what you have right there kind of waned. Some people don't want them. Most people did not at the beginning, and now I have a whole group of people who think that they want the notch because here again, I don't mean to keep throwing Bix's name up here. He's a very good friend of mine, and I love him. And I like, kind of similar to what you're doing here. He does research that you don't find anywhere else, and he talks about, someone told him about something called diamond dust that can be put on that notch that can be read by certain machinery where it can show the validation that it's legitimate or whatnot. I don't know. I haven't heard that from anyone but him. But all I can tell you is that when it first came out, no one wanted the notched coins, and now there's a growing group of a segment of people that do, because they think it will play into what's coming next.
Well, if we're thinking from
Yeah,
a conspiracy type thing, it could have just been they could have just said, okay, well, we know the majority of people, or there's a percentage of people that protect their try to hedge their money and want to buy gold and silver. There's probably a percentage that are a little paranoid. So let's throw the security thing on there. We'll probably use it later, whatever. But let's see if we could dissuade and confuse them as much as possible. I don't know if that is the case, if they could actually think that far ahead, but it would be a good way to be like, oh, well, now I got to think twice now about buying these coins because I don't know why they put it there. And it
I
could be
can
a
tell you that there
that.
is a very fine line between conspiracy and reality. When I was speaking at the Agora and the Sprott conference years ago, talking about J.P. Morgan manipulation, and remember Doug Casey getting up and saying there is no manipulation. After I spoke, the traders at J.P. Morgan could never keep their mouth shut long enough. And Doug and I are friendly. I was a little annoyed by it, but vindication. Oh, they paid a $920 million fine for manipulating the market. There is a fine line between conspiracy and reality. And again, the term Occam's razor, try to find an answer. The most logical answer prevails, typically, is what Occam's razor says. When confronted with an issue and you don't know the answer, it's typically the most logical one. Well, here again, what is the reason? Don't know. But, it's probably closer to reality than it is conspiracy, whatever it is people think the reason behind it is.
Well, it's just that weird timing and all, that I think it came out during the height of the pandemic when they were talking about shortages and production issues, and then they switch out the dyes, this brand new ego, when it sort of would have been counterintuitive in terms of a strategy. If you're already having issues producing these coins, why throw a monkey wrench into the procedure by doing something completely different, So just based on that, coincidental timing of everything, it adds to the sort of the conspiracy here.
Right.
But in my opinion, when it came out, I was very apprehensive. I was watching Big Swear's channel at the time, and he had alerted me to this notch, and my first impression was, what are they up to? So I think that's still a sort of a, in the forefront of people's mind. Is it for, like you said, this diamond dust, where it's going to be used for a new ATM process, or could it be more just another idea of how can we get people not to buy our eagles, like another bluff, and that sort of finally gets us into the summary page of this sort of plan that I've kind of put up with. So if they're by law required to meet demands, if they can only pay spot, if they have to get from the comex, if Apes purchased specifically the 2023 American Silver Eagles, in my opinion, I think we can use the momentum of a worldwide ape front of buying, maybe just, if middle population, about 1 ounce silver eagles each. This would be over in like a matter of a week. If 0.1% of the world bought silver eagles, this would be over instead of a month in my logic kind of mindset, just because of how little we have. We know that the comex only has 20 million ounces, and we know that the last couple of years of the mint, 15, 13 million ounces produced in a year, it's nothing. It's less than half 27 of the comex. So I feel like we can push the mint in a very uncomfortable position. What do you think, Andy?
Well, I think your logic is fantastic. And had I not heard with my own ears the mint director, or the Eagle director, saying that they produced a third of what was demanded, I would say 100% this is a great path. I don't know that the retail demand will squeeze the mint. Maybe it does. What my hopes would be that it gains noticeability and notoriety and becomes understood, because maybe more so what you are showing is a real opportunity for people who understand what's happening. The question becomes, what does it take for the mint to start producing eagles in quantities sufficient to meet demand, where premiums fall in line to where they've been for the last 30 years? I think that the one issue that becomes also a little challenging is the premium that we're seeing on these coins. 11, 12, $13 over the price of silver becomes a little bit difficult. Look, the bottom line is this: if everyone were to buy up silver eagles, it would shine a light, and maybe you get some mainstream journalistic integrity that catches on to this and says, they're not following the law. Silver demand is way higher. The eagles are not available. The mint has run out of the ability to meet demand, and they're not doing anything to get it. Or maybe at that point, the government quietly goes to the COMEX and says, you need to tell the world no more delivery, because we can't reasonably take delivery, or if we can't say that we can't take delivery if we can, and yet we're intentionally not meeting demand. Look, maybe not squeeze them in, maybe squeeze them in. How about shine a light on the legality of what they're doing? And again, the why, the ramifications of what it means, which spurs on greater demand nationally here, with all the states that are waking up, more reason for people to start researching and learning about silver. People in the state of North Carolina who never thought about it, maybe they are. And all of a sudden they research and they read this and they see this. Well, gosh, if this is the case, you get more and more and more people waking up, and bang, like that, these types of things can happen. What we would represent is the little pebble at the top of the mountain that we push down the hill, and hopefully it gathers, by the time it gets down to the bottom, it's a massive boulder, and you see great disruption. What I want to simply say is this: I don't know that all of us combined have the ability, because of their ability to change the rules, to squeeze them in. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But what I do think we have the ability to do in a very articulate fashion is to expose the underlying issue. And their reaction may help actually expose the underlying issue. And that is, we're running out of silver. Its needs industrially and strategically are far greater than anyone thinks. Its supplies geologically and above ground are literally disappearing and being depleted, while its uses are expanding. What you have the opportunity to do here is to shine a light on one area of inequality and injustice and an opportunity. Maybe it turns into the fact that all of a sudden you're getting phone calls from, Fox News, that you started something saying, how is it that you guys were able to squeeze them in? Maybe. Or maybe it's just another effort that is leading to an ultimate resolution of people waking up and understanding just exactly this opportunity and what it means. And if it comes from focusing on the mint and taking a step back and say, holy shit, it's not just the mint, it's everywhere. Globally, it's disappearing. The US government said by 2036, it'll all be gone. So I don't mean to not completely agree with your premise. I do agree with your premise. The question is it a direct
Momentum.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get at. What you're doing here is adding to the momentum and the awakening and the understanding. And this is just one facet of it. And it speaks to the government being involved and behind this. So if the government is involved and behind it, the question is why? And that why is the question that you are exposing in a very articulate manner here. And ultimately, you get to the same end result. May not happen by blowing up the mint or by comex. Maybe it does. But what it does do, I think it wakes up a lot of people to just how intriguing and amazing the opportunity truly is.
If we're able to do this in a proper manner and get the steam that I think that we will be able to generate, especially with people like you helping us in this effort. I mean, what the SilverSqueeze started, they stopped, to some extent, because of the people involved with it in the first place. So we're going to finish the job, and I think we're going to be able to expose all that stuff you were talking about. And can we be Can we be talked about like GameStop? Can silver?
Well, and
be
I'd like
talked
to
about like
I'd like to
GameStop?
bring up a point. That's a good point, and I think people need to understand one thing. I mean, yeah, you can be enriched from it, but to me, the reason you own this, and by waking people up to the benefits of owning it, you create the same end game. But the reason to own it is not to get wealthy. It is wealth, and it's been wealth for 5,000 years. You own enough of it, you'll be wealthy. But I think part of the mistake that the SilverSqueeze, the people who bought into it, part of the mistake that ended the euphoria was that they wanted to capture the same type of returns that you saw in GameStop and AMC. They wanted to get rich. That's not why you buy silver. You buy silver because our wealth is being stolen from us by the debasement of the currency, and ultimately the hyperinflation that will ensue in order to meet our obligations of 100, almost $200 trillion that are be impossible to meet without inflation and printing money. Along the way, the supply demand fundamentals will make you wealthy in dollar terms, but that's not the reason to buy it. And if you hold it for that reason, then when the price gets smashed on a Friday where 26 million ounces are dumped at the open in no logical fashion other than to freak people out and to cut down the open interest, then it makes it a lot easier not only to hold on, but to double down and buy more. If you're buying it to get rich and to screw the COMEX and the US Mint, you're dealing with some of the biggest money on the planet and the money that has the ability to change the rules. But by changing the rules, you've just shown a light on the illegitimacy. And that in and of itself gets to the same point. So whether you blow it up literally or shine a light, so much of a bright light that everyone realizes that, oh shit, this is the opportunity of a generation. The end result is the same thing. And if you're going to own silver, look at it as the opportunity of a generation that, if you don't need it, you give it to your kids someday. And if you do, you're damn glad you're having it. It's not just for an emergency. It could be a hell of an opportunity, because when all this shit blows up, there are going to be values out there where a few ounces of silver will buy you more than you could ever imagine, maybe. And that's why you hold it, not to capitalize on squeezing the market and make a fortune. That may be a byproduct of it. But if you look at it as wealth that you want to accumulate along the way, then I think it makes it much easier to embrace this ideology of what the ultimate goal really is. And if your short-term horizons to make money is your motivation, I think you're making a mistake. It very well may make you a lot of money in a short period of time, but to me, that's the wrong way to look at it. I look at it as generational, historical, immutable wealth that for 5,000 years, all of mankind has agreed upon as it being money. And in the end, everything comes full circle. And I think that's what this, to me, represents, the ability for you guys to carry this torch and educate people. Yeah, sure. It represents a great opportunity to become wealthy, but it's wealth. It's not an investment. It is wealth. And that is what I would focus on primarily.
Yeah, either
Well, I
outcome
think
is going
you're
to be
absolutely
amazing.
right. Either way, it's going to bring light to a massive audience if we get this enough traction. And if a massive audience and it sees the same information that we do, I think they would get to the same conclusion that there's a big concern here with the silver stockpiles being depleted, that we use an exceedingly insane amount for our military applications, that we're going to need to revamp our military, and that's going to cost a ridiculous amount of silver. Do we even have it? With the comex and the reapplication, do they even have it? If the U.S. Mint pressed the comex, where the Hunt brothers, you're talking about rule changes, they had to change the rules in order to stop that, tamp down the market. So, are we going to see the U.S. Mint, engage the COMEX and the COMEX actually change the rules on the U.S. Mint? And then what are the implications of that? It sort of gets into this chaos sort of, path along the way.
Which is
It just really
inevitability, in my
depends on the amount of
opinion.
momentum.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
going to be chaos
exactly.
at the end because you have industrials competing against investment funds and people like us who have been talking about this for a long time, who understand it, who now become mainstream legitimate, and I think that that's one of the things that's missing here. You go back to 1980, no one wanted stocks or bonds. They wanted silver dollars and gold coins. Things will go back to an environment where real money is embraced by the mainstream. And I really do believe that based upon the direction that the states are going, based upon the direction that the central banks are going, based upon gold being reclassified a tier one asset, based upon all of the draining of the world's exchanges. It will be recognized, and part of the ability of the big money to reposition themselves has rested in the fact that price has been allowed them to do these kinds of things where the US Mint, it has something is not right at the US Mint where they can make 40 or 50 million ounces in 2012 when nobody wants it, yet when everyone's buying it they make 12 or 13. So I do think they probably are actively accumulating silver for the strategic stockpile and just not telling anyone. And I think that probably to me is the most logical explanation. So in the end, again, the mathematics and the economics will prevail. And if you were trying to restockpile something in a town that you live in, and there's one store that has it, no one really understands its significance, but you certainly wouldn't tell everyone how great it is to get that asset. You'd want to go in there every time you get paid and drain whatever you can before everyone realizes, oh shit, I got to go to that store. I saw that they have it. Well, no, it's all gone. The apes got it all. Well, that's kind of the thing here. I think your eyes lie to you. And this is kind of way off topic, but it reminds me when I was young, I heard a record, those of you old enough to remember vinyl records of Richard Pryor. And he's in bed with another woman, and his wife comes in and he says, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? And so I think the problem is your eyes lie to you. And you got to trust your gut at this point of the game. Your eyes will lie to you. Well, why the hell is the price only $23 an ounce if it's such a great deal? Well, that's what we've talked about here. That's exactly why the price is $23 an ounce, because if it weren't being bled dry by the biggest, most sophisticated, well-funded, well-informed investors on the planet, then yeah, I'd feel that way. But the fact that it is 23 counterintuitively and at the same time is disappearing in every way, that is the why, or that is why it's being suppressed. The ultimate why rests in the fact that it's a disappearing asset that is needed, and if you don't have it, you're fucked, period. And that's why you have to hold it for the right reasons. This won't be something, maybe it's something that happens like that, or maybe it's something that happens over a period of time and then like that, but it's going to happen in a fashion that most people won't get. I mean, who would have thought COVID would do what it did? Who would have thought that the banks would fail, do what it did? The logic, the mathematics, and the probability are in our favor. The what, or the trigger, the fuse, take your pick. There's a million to choose from. And again, what you have shown us here is articulate, and it's very spot on. And to me, maybe more than anything I've really thought about for a while, explains what's really going on with the drawdowns and with the US Mint. And because maybe they realize, just like you do, that if they don't have it, we are in danger of a growing chorus of countries who militarily have a greater might than we do. You put all these countries together against the US, and we're not as big and brave as we think we are when we're standing up against, the Russian and the Chinese and the Indian and South African, all these armies together. God forbid, if it, long down the road, you put all of these countries together, not only is their GDP and their military might bigger than us, but that represent the majority of human population, and they're not going to sell to us if we're not part of that game. And what are all the countries having? What do all the countries that comprise the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Belt Road and the Eurasian Economic Union, they're all coming together. What do they all have in common? They're the biggest accumulators and producers of these commodities on the planet. And that is what this all comes back to. And to me, this is as intriguing and compelling of a reason behind what's happening as anything I've read in a very long time.
Well, thank you, Randy. I just want to just have one more question, because it's kind of like burning in my mind, is that so we have this moving thread of shortages, but that also could potentially, if it's a really big national security issue and our government has no access to silver, that sort of would potentially trigger a confiscation point. From your, understanding of what happened in the past, is the Eagle safer to hold, versus sort of a generic coin, if the government did get back into a corner and have to institute some sort of confiscation?
Well, I will answer that in the most honest way that I can. And I can say this because it's been said publicly. First of all, it hasn't motivated me to do what I'm about to tell you. But I heard it with my own ears. Bill Holter is one of my best friends in this industry, and he's one of my best friends, period. And I love Bill. And for a very long time, he was partners with a man named Jim Sinclair. Most people probably don't know who he is unless you're an old guy like me. And Jim was known as Mr. Gold in the 70s and 80s. And his father, Murray Seligman, Jim's real last name is Seligman, and his father was involved in unwinding the Hunt brothers position. He was a very famous Wall Street trader. You Google him, he'll pop right up. And Jim told me at dinner one night that his family is the Goldman and Goldman Sachs. And he was told that there would be two resets. The first one would be a man-made reset, and it would fail. And when the second reset came via Mother Nature, that the US government would confiscate anything that was American-made in origin. Now, he told me that. Does that mean it's true? Don't know. He believed it to be true. I know Bill kind of believes it. I have lots of stuff that isn't American-made, personally. I haven't sold it and converted it and traded it. But to your point, could that happen? Sure. I guess in theory it could. If you look at the laws that are being put forth, the majority of the states that are embracing gold and silver, a couple of them say only US made. Most of them say any sovereign mint coin. Maybe do they do that? I don't know. Look, the truth of the matter is, and I've said it before, you and me and all the people listening to this are the pimple on the elephant's ass. And the question becomes, when the elephant needs it, do things change? I think by activating eminent domain and taking metal from the public, when countries like China and Russia who removes the VAT tax, telling their public to buy it, China, who Alistair McLeod believes that the public holds 18,000 metric tons of gold, and they hold 38,000 metric tons of gold, would be 5 times what we supposedly hold. you activate eminent domain, you end up. I think that's the end game. I mean, that is the very, very checkmate move. But how about this for a thought? You have a company like JP Morgan who paid a $920 million fine for manipulating the metals market. At the same time, they run and have been allowed to continue to run the world's largest silver trust. They run a few others too, but SLV, say what you want about it, whether it's all there or some of it or whatever, they are supposedly the largest stockpile of silver in the world. And it's held by the biggest crooked cartel price suppressing bank in the world. And HSBC holds GLD. So, you come in on a Friday night and you take those two funds, pay everyone their fair share of dollars, whatever it was worth. That 99.9% of the people who own GLD and SLV can never take possession of it. So now you're sitting on all the gold and silver you need in one central location held by criminal banks without breaking laws or infringing civil liberties. Look the world in the face, say, what? We didn't do anything. We have the right to do this. The prospectus gives us the right to do this. And I think it's equally interesting. Now, I don't know if BlackRock still is behind SLV or they gave sole rights to JP Morgan, but I find it interesting that, I know that BlackRock for a very long time, if not still, has been involved with SLV. And I find it interesting that they bought $175 million worth of PSLV, which is the Sprott Physical Trust held at the Royal Canadian Mint. Does that mean that they don't trust their own SLV? That maybe SLV is part of the nationalization process ultimately? I don't know. Spitballing, Occam's razor, have no idea. But why did they buy PSLV and not SLV? So to me, instead of going door to door to the 1 out of a million people who own silver, who believe in the NRA and are not as patriotic as they were in 33, why not just create a couple of funds that the big banks hold that attract all the investment money? When everyone says, I need to get silver, well, you can't get any, but hey, I'll sell you SLV. And then bang, confiscate it and just nationalize it and pay everyone in dollars. It would allow them to have their cake and eat it too.
That sounds exactly what they would do. Yeah, I've always been a big proponent of physical in your hand silver. It's the only way that you can keep the riggers out of your pockets.
Indeed, indeed.
Especially in these uncertain times, age of fraud, so much money has gone away in terms of just scams. Such these are the times that we really have to be doing our due diligence and making sure that we're preserving our wealth. Like you were saying earlier in the conversation, it's not about the moonshot, but when inevitability happens and we are entering into a hyperinflationary period, that is when we get a generational move to make the wealth by strategically using that preserved wealth when there is no other value to the dollar that is regularly circulating. So that is, at the end of the day, apes are going to be okay. And we need to make as sure as it should, as everyone that we can reach is going to be okay if they also hold silver. So
I agree. And you have my profound respect for your work here. It's fantastic. And I will do my best to get it out and keep doing this type of, investigation. It is the facts and it is the logic behind it that will wake up the masses, not the people who are watching this that who already understand what's happening. I think you have an opportunity to, tell a story to a larger audience. And this is stuff that is very, very, very important and adds a lot of substance to what is a very confusing time. But you take a step back and you realize that, this is probably very, very much closer to the truth than it is any type of conspiracy or any type of fantasy. It just, all of the logic that you have really fantastically put out, I think is great. You should be commended. And I'll make sure and send this interview out to everyone I can and put it on our mailing list. And I think we should do things like this or live streams every week or every other week, whatever works for you guys. I'm happy to do it every week. And, one of the things that I want to do for your listeners is our website, which is new, has at least 4 or 5 updates between now and September. That a lot of it due to tax software. We're not sending to every state yet because the tax software is not integrated. For your listeners, they can go to the website. They can type in, ape in the in the box at checkout. But the best way to get a special price on Silver Eagles, which I would like to offer to your listeners, and let's just say it'll be as good of a price as they'll find anywhere, and it'll be a special price just for your people, would be to send us an email at info@milesfranklin, and in the subject line, just put apes or Silver Eagles ape, and or whatever code you want to put on this. Let us know, send us an email, and we'll make sure that we personally contact every single one of your listeners and make sure that in terms of Silver Eagle purchases, that it's as good of a deal as they'll find anywhere in the country. And we'll do this one coin at a time. And if you would like to receive, aside from our website, prices much more competitive, larger orders, send us an email at info@milesfranklin, and we'll make sure, just make sure you put whatever designation you would like in the subject line, and I'll let you guys tell your audience what that designation should be. And I will personally make sure not only that it's a great experience, but that we put silver in your people's hands at phenomenal prices, and are there to answer questions and be there when they need us, if they don't want to go directly to the website.
Well, holy crap. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, the premiums on Silver Eagles are like, that's the bluff in all of this, that makes the drain where the U.S. Mint doesn't want this to happen. And I think is because it relates directly to the premium. So to help the ape community out in that capacity is just epic. And it just shows that you believe in this. So I really, really appreciate it.
I do, and make sure you let everyone know about the a couple of what am I trying to say, the giveaways that we are going to run, and we'll be happy to contribute some Silver Eagles and send them out to people watching this. And I guess other than that, I look forward to coming back on. Let's do it again next week if there's time, and count me in. This is the kind of thing that I like, and I just really like the way that you guys present and communicate, and that's what this industry needs right now is this type of information that is articulately laid out to support what the end game is, and that is accumulating real wealth and getting out of the way of the brain dead monetary policy, and that is ultimately going to I think wreak havoc on the wealth of the mainstream. I think if you are not a contrarian right now, you're bound to be a victim. And I think what you're doing right here is a step in the right direction. And I look forward to helping get this information out and doing this with you on a continuing basis.
Well, we do have we love and thank you, Andy, for the support and for offering our members a discount. That's amazing. So thank you again for that.
And I'm not even going to publicly say what that is, but just know that when they come to us, it's going to be a price that they will be very, very, very happy about, and I'll make sure of that.
That's amazing, man. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, so the hashtag Drain the Mint contest will be coming out soon, and there will be a very generous prize that's going to be given out by Miles Franklin, by Andy, and we're going to start promoting that as early as either today or tomorrow. So look out, everyone, for that. That's going to be the details on how to enter, and videos, promos, all kinds of stuff are going to be sent out. We're going to send you the stuff, Andy, too, so you could if you want to send it out, you can send it out everywhere too. And
I will. One last piece before I run to add a bow on everything that you guys have said. I just received an email, I'm looking at it right now, from one of the largest distributors of gold and silver in North America. Okay. This is a company that is huge and has probably $1 billion of inventory. And when it comes to Silver Eagles, they have 2023 Silver Eagles, 9,000 available, ships July 17th. That's it. So one of the biggest distributors in North America, a U.S. mint distributor, only has 9,000 Silver Eagles, but won't have them until July 17th. Well, what the hell is 9,000 Silver Eagles to a primary distributor? That's nothing, right? And normally, in normal times, I could place an order for 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, whatever you want. Last July 4th, when we did the $52 million or $50 million order, the 4 days before July 4th, I was able to locate 960,000 Silver Eagles. And one of the biggest distributors in the world only has 9,000 2023s. If that doesn't underscore everything you're talking about, everything that we've talked about, I don't know what will. So keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path.
Vulnerable.
Yep.
It is vulnerable, and we're gonna keep spreading the awareness with the hashtag Drain the Mint, and it's gonna be good. I think we're gonna see one of those two outcomes that you talked about earlier, Andy, come to fruition, and it's gonna happen. And that's a win. That's a huge win. Whatever, either the comex blows up or it forces the mint to have to change the rules, or the government has to change the rules, and I'll take either
Awareness is key.
Awareness is the key, and I think this will get extremely viral in the financial industry as we continue this goal. This new squeeze, the real squeeze, the one that actually does something. And it's going to be very, very powerful.
Well, I look forward to being part of it. I thank you guys for the opportunity. You guys are great, and we've been doing this almost 2 hours now, and I gotta fly. But like I said, let's do this. We should do this every week. We should find a way to stay out in front of the public, and it's an honor to be here with you guys. And I'll do as much research as I can, so that every time we talk, we do it in a way that is educating the public and offering them opportunities. And until we chat again, you guys, I'll look forward to picking up where we left off. But I hope you both have a great weekend, and everyone out there, a great rest of the week, great weekend, and everyone stay well.
Thank you so much, Andy,
for
being with us. Thank you, Illuminated Ape, for all the crazy research that you just put together. And remember, everyone, if you love silver and you're buying it, you are a degenerate in the eyes of the central banks. So stay degen.
Time to shout out the elites of the galaxy, our SDC Patreon supporters. Thank you GG Goliath for supporting our intergalactic efforts for silver stacking. Remember, anyone who signs up for our Patreon can get their name shouted out here as well. Later, skaters.